All right, welcome today to our Get Savvy, Grow Your Green Stuff webinar, buying versus renting a home. We use our chat a lot, so if you can go ahead and tell us in the chat if you can hear us today, that would be really great. Like I said earlier, we are recording the webinar, so if something happens where you have to log off, we will be sending the recording later if you registered for this webinar. So don't fret, you will get the recording, you'll get all the information as long as you registered today. All right, we have a bunch of content to go over, so I'm going to go ahead and roll on to the next slide. My name is Andrea Pellegrini. I run the Student Money Management Center out of University Bursar for the entire University of Illinois system. You may have heard me on previous webinars if you've logged on, and I'm going to be co-hosting this webinar today with my friend Jake. Jake, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. My name is Jake Hamilton. I work for the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation, and I work for the Division of Banking within that department. And I just help Andrea out and some of our other colleagues with some financial education topics. We host a podcast and we do a lot of different things over there. So I'm happy to be here today to talk about renting and home buying.
Thank you so much, Jake. Jake and I, along with several other co-hosts that are active in the chat today, collectively represent the Get Savvy webinar team. And we're from organizations across the state of Illinois, which rest on the ancestral lands of multiple Native nations, including the Peoria, the Kaskaskia, Piankashaw, Wea, Miami, Mascoutin, Ottawa, Sauk, Meskwaki, Kickapoo, Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Chickasha nations. And we have a responsibility to acknowledge these nations and to work with them as we move forward as a vibrant and inclusive society. So if you can put in the chat, because like I said earlier, we really like using the chat, what state and or county you're logging in from today, that will really help us out. We'll be going over some kind of national standards and legislation, as well as some state legislation that might be helping you out as a renter or as a homeowner or someone looking to be a homeowner. We got people from all over Illinois, a lot of Champaign, Cook County, someone from Nebraska. Thank you. Someone from Ohio. This is fabulous. So we're so excited that so many of you are from all across Illinois, but also a little bit all over the nation. So thank you for joining us today. I'm going to hand it back over to Jake to talk about our learning objectives.
Thank you, Andrea. And yeah, let's just get into it today. So today, just up top, we want to go over some of the goals that we have for the webinar today. So we want to define terms related to both renting and buying a home. We want to explain how credit can impact access to housing, like leasing or buying a home. We want to compare household budgets for renting and buying a home. We want to discuss considerations for whether renting or buying is right for you and how you can make that choice. And lastly, we want to share some resources with you all for both rental assistance and home ownership. And these objectives are generally based on the U.S. financial capability standards. So we want to just at the beginning here, we want to get a feel for the audience and what you guys are doing. So we would like to get a poll of the audience and let us know if you're currently renting, are you a homeowner maybe with a mortgage or without a mortgage, or are you in some other housing situation? Maybe you're staying with parents or other family, or any other thing that you might have going on. So it looks like we've got a good chunk of our audience are renters today. Got a few homeowners and a couple others as well. All right, I think just about everybody is answered. So yeah, it looks like we got 67% renters, 15% of the audience are homeowners that are without a mortgage, and 7% are homeowners with a mortgage, and 11% are others. So thanks for sharing that with us. And we also want to dive into some just like top line statistics about renting and home ownership today. So we'll just go over some quick statistics. So the current rental vacancy rate is 5.6% in the US, and the median asking rent, so like what a landlord asks you to pay, is just over $1,200 a month. The current homeowner vacancy rate is 0.9%, and the median asking sales price on homes is 239,000. So there are more vacant rental units than there are homes. And then we also pulled some information from a couple different data sets. So this isn't exactly 100, or we pulled information from a couple of different data sets, but the current home ownership rate in 2021 is about 65.5%, and the current rental rate, renters as of household, is 36% as of 2019. And to break that down a little further, the amount of homeowners with a mortgage is about 62%, just over it, and the amount of homeowners without a mortgage is 39 or 37.9%, when we break that down a little bit. And as far as the renters go, like we said, there's about 36% of households where the head of household rented their home. Those people were more likely to be young adults, non-white, and less educated, were the people who were more likely to rent. We also want to talk about some of the demographics that are surrounding renting and home ownership. So Americans who are Black, Hispanic, or are under age 35 are more likely to rent than own. We also want to address housing insecurity today. Lack of access to affordable housing increases housing insecurity issues, which can impact people's health in addition to a number of other things. So since we're going to be talking about home buying and renting, we did feel it's important to draw some attention to this issue of housing insecurity, particularly since the COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated it. The economic hardships that individuals faced from the pandemic disproportionately impacted women and people of color. And housing insecurity or instability is measured in a number of different ways. So it could look like homelessness, couch surfing, maybe trouble paying rent or trouble paying utilities. It can even be measured by eviction rates at a community level. And I'm going to turn it back over to Andrea now to talk about how you can make the decision about whether you want to rent or buy.
Thank you, Jake. So like Jake said, the real reason you're here, the real question can be answered is, should you rent or buy a home? So depending on if you rent or own your home, your monthly household budget is going to look a little different. The majority of the cost is typically either your rent or mortgage, depending on where you are in life. But there are also utilities considered. If you're renting, some of those may be included, they may not. If you have a mortgage, that payment may include a payment towards something called an escrow account that includes homeowners insurance and taxes or money for that. If you don't have a mortgage, you still have to pay homeowners insurance and taxes. So that's something to keep in mind. It doesn't go away when your mortgage gets paid off. You may also have homeowners association or HOA or condo fees as a homeowner. And you'll need emergency savings either as a renter or a homeowner, but it might be a lot more substantial amounts that you need to cover maintenance costs if you own a home. So do you guys think anything is missing from these examples of household budgets you want to put in the chat? We tried to keep it very specific to household budget. There might be other factors that are lifestyle costs that you include in your personal monthly household budget, like your commuter costs or your food costs or your entertainment costs, but this is just about your lodging, basically. So what we wanted to highlight for differences here. Before you decide if renting or buying is best for you, there are lots of factors you might want to consider, like equity, the housing and rental markets, your life transitions or anticipated life transitions, and your values. And there's varying levels of personal responsibility or liability that each one of these types of lodging options entails. And we'll touch on these in the next few slides. We're going to go fast, like I said, because there's a lot to cover. So home equity, which I just previously mentioned is when you take the current market value of your home, basically what you could realistically sell it for given your neighborhood's current housing market, you subtract what you owe on it, and what's left is your home equity. This home equity is where a lot of people hold their wealth, but it's not always the case or a guarantee if you buy a home, because housing market values fluctuate. Mortgage costs can delay progress towards building that equity if you're not paying down the principal balance of the loan, or because the housing market impacts equity if there's a dip in the housing market, right? Time has a very strong influence on your ability to build wealth, or equity as wealth, which is why anticipating what your life transitions and future goals are is kind of important when you're thinking about renting versus buying. A residence is really not considered an investment. It is an asset, but it also has a lot of liabilities attached to it. So most financial planners strictly view your home as a place to live. It may or may not have value depending on those liabilities and the market and what you owe, all kinds of things. We have some resources that we're putting in the chat to help back up kind of everything that we're talking about, give you some more context since we're going so fast. So make sure to check those out. But if you can't click on them fast enough, that's okay. We're going to include those when we send our follow-up email. All right, so if you've been paying any attention to the news around the housing market, it's been weird the past couple years. So according to an article from the US Census Bureau in October of 2021, the housing market kind of stopped in March 2020 when the United States went into lockdown at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. And by the time summer hit that year, more people were ready to buy homes. You also saw this reduction in the amount of homes available for purchase in 2020. So it made the market super competitive for buyers, for people that needed a more comfortable place to work from home or were more willing to buy further out from where their work was. But this meant that home values went up and have been up even through a lot of 2021, depending on where you are regionally, what the market looks like locally in the area that you're trying to buy. So we just wanted to note that. Another thing that we wanted to note, this is a graph with data from Zillow that shows how home values have gone up while average asking rent prices have gone down. Home values have gone up quite a bit because more people are looking to buy, and availability of properties, like we talked about, for sale just can't keep up with the demand. So this drives up the Zillow Home Value Index. And people looking to buy homes can also impact demand for rental spaces. So you see this Zillow Observed Rent Index go down, which is a measurement of rent prices over time. So you can see where they're diverging in this particular graph. So another article from The Atlantic in 2021 noted that there is this severe shortage of single family homes that can increase prices. Lower interest rates can also encourage more people to get mortgages that wouldn't have been able to afford it previously, which is impacting some of the trends that we've just noted. Millennials are also getting to a point in their lives where many are trying to start families, and they're more able to start families, which increases the likelihood to look for more permanent housing than the rental situation that they've been used to. And then plus 30 to 39, that age range is prime home buying age. And many millennials are kind of in their 30s now. Another thing that can impact costs is construction costs. And we've seen inflation go up and cost of materials go up over the past few years. And that can also impact lower income communities and affordability of housing. So when we talked earlier about who's more likely to rent than to own, the construction costs can kind of play a factor in that. And then of course, supply and demand will also impact trends for both homeownership and rental properties. All right, so there are many responsibilities to consider that come along with homeownership. Some of these are what people consider kind of the hidden costs of ownership. These include property taxes and homeowners insurance. Like we talked about earlier, this is usually saved for in escrow for homes with a mortgage, but it's not always. Some mortgages don't require you to save for those things in escrow, but some do. So make sure that you're paying attention to that kind of cost when you're comparing mortgage options. Some people also consider the mortgage interest deduction on taxes as something that will help them to deduct some or all of the interest that they pay on their mortgage from their federal income taxes. But contrary to popular belief, it doesn't help all homeowners save on taxes. And we have some more resources in the chat on that in particular from the CFPB that you can check out. There's also things like HOA and condo fees that we talk about when comparing monthly budgets. There's maintenance costs like for roof or HVAC, electrical, plumbing, if you get termites, if you get mold. And then there's also landscaping or lawn care costs to consider, which are all homeownership liabilities. Not all homes are going to have a lawn or landscaping to do, but it is something to compare, especially if you're looking at a condo where your condo fees cover landscaping and lawn care versus a single family home where you are responsible for that yourself. Some other questions that you might want to address before deciding to buy is, what is the cost of the home? How long do you plan to stay in the home? Again, that impacts your equity. What does your mortgage look like? What are the property taxes and the interest going to cost on top of the principal that you borrow? What are the closing costs associated with that loan, which can be different? What does the future look like for you? Thinking about life transitions and values and what you want your life to look like, or discussing that with your partner. Those are all really important things to consider or ask or discuss. What are the costs of maintenance and other fees like the HOA and condo fees that we talked about earlier? And alternatively, what are the additional rental costs that you currently have or would have in the area that you're looking to buy? So there are many calculators out there that exist to help you do the math on whether renting or buying is right for you. But a lot of it depends on your life stage and your values, which is why you got to be introspective about what you want and what you have the capacity for, and discuss that with the people that matter to this buying process or renting process. So thank you for putting in the chat all the calculator examples that we pulled out, Kathy. So that might be helpful for anyone that needs the math to back things up. And I'm going to hand it over to Jake to talk about renting a home.
Thank you, Andrea. So yeah, I think that was a great breakdown of kind of everything that goes into making this really important decision of, whether you are looking to buy or rent a home. And renting can be a great option if you're looking for, a more temporary place of residence. So let's kind of talk about the basics of renting a home. Like I said, we're going to talk about some of the terms associated with it and some of the steps as well. So briefly at the top here, we're going to talk about these steps more in detail as I go throughout this out the slides. But at the very top, we just want to talk about the rental checklist. And these are kind of some of the first top line things you want to do. First is you want to check your credit. It's important to know what your credit score is when you go to start looking for a place to rent, because a lot of times there will be like a minimum credit score requirement for an application. You want to set a budget so that you have an idea of how much you're looking to spend on your housing cost or your rent, and probably, what your, maximum amount that you're willing to spend on a place to rent is as well. You want to go look for places. This can be a stressful item for some and maybe a fun item for others. It kind of all just depends on who you are and what you like to do. But sometimes looking at new places can be fun and exciting. Then once you have a place picked out and you've been accepted, you're going to need to review your lease and sign it. This is a really important step. You want to make sure that you look over everything that goes into it, and we'll talk about that more. And then lastly, you just need to prepare to move in. And there's sometimes a lot of things that go into this. Sometimes moves can be very simple if you're just moving across town. Sometimes you can be moving from state to state or city to city, and there's a lot more planning that has to go into it. So let's talk about all that. So credit reports and renting. Like I said, you really want to make sure you know what your credit score is going in, and also be aware that credit checks happen when you apply for a rental property. Creditworthiness can obviously impact your ability to rent or sign a lease. And many background checks include a credit check. There's probably also going to be like a criminal background check as well when you apply for an apartment or a home to rent. You can use annualcreditreport.com to get credit reports from Equifax, Experience, and TransUnion. Those are the three big credit reporting agencies. And you really want to make sure you look at your credit reports so that if there's any errors on your credit report, you can correct them to make sure the data is accurate and your credit score is going to be accurate as well, to make sure that you don't have any errors. And if you do have errors on them, you want to make sure they're corrected before you go to apply for places. That so wouldn't prevent you from getting into an apartment that you really like. We want to talk about some of the legislation for renters as well. There's a lot of protections out there, and I'm by no means going to be able to get to all of them today. I'm sorry. Make sure you're staying on mute if you're not speaking right now. I've got a little background noise going on, so just try to stay on mute. But we're going to talk a lot about. We're going to talk about some of the legislation that's out there. Like I said, I won't be able to get to all of it. We're going to talk about some of the big ones. When we were talking about the applications, when they look at your credit, when you go to apply for a rental unit, they actually can either be a hard inquiry or soft inquiry. The difference is that a hard inquiry can impact your credit score, whereas a soft inquiry doesn't. It's just someone looking at what your credit score is, versus a hard, they're kind of diving into the data more. And typically, if the landlord only wants to take a look at it, it should be soft, but you can ask about this before you apply. So if you're worried about a hard inquiry impacting your credit, make sure you ask about that up front. And that might not be a place that you want to apply for if that's what they're going to do. So there's two big federal regulations that impact renters. The Fair Housing Act protects tenants from discrimination on the basis of race, color, sex, national origin, familial status, or disability, and it protects against discriminatory advertising. And the Fair Credit Reporting Act protects tenants by requiring landlords to get permission before doing a credit check. So they will have to ask you. And it also requires landlords to disclose if credit was the basis for rejecting an application. So if you apply for a place and get rejected based on your credit, they do have to tell you that. And like I said, there's a lot of other federal regulations out there that are related to like what landlords can do and what your protections are as a tenant, as a potential tenant. So I think we're going to post those in chat and when we send out the email after this as well, to give some more resources. And then obviously, or maybe not obviously, but state regulations vary widely from state to state. So different states have different laws about what renters can do and what landlords can do. And the agency, the Housing Urban Development Agency, has a really great website where you can look at the tenant rights by state. So if you're in Illinois, you can go click on Illinois. If you're in Texas, you can click on Texas, and we're going to post that link as well in chat. And if you want to learn more about credit, we actually have an entire Get Savvy webinar on credit, and we also have our Making Sense of Money podcast where we did an episode on credit as well. So I would encourage you to go check out either of those resources. And now we're going to talk a little bit about, how to kind of look for apartments. There can be a lot that go into that. So I'm curious to hear from you all in the audience. How have you searched for apartments or like maybe even a home to rent before? Where do you go to look for those things? Is it the newspaper or do you do it online? Online, I see someone walked neighborhoods that they like. Yeah, that can be. Sometimes if you drive by and you see a place and maybe they'll have a sign out front that says they're leasing. Online, I see Zillow, Drive the Neighborhood, word of mouth. Yep. Yeah, those are all great options. So there are lots of choices to look for rental places. Like some of you said, you can go to online sites like, Zillow or apartments.com or Redfin. You can look for places to rent. Maybe your family, friends, or coworkers have an idea or have heard of a place via word of mouth. Newspapers. This might be, some might think this is maybe a little outdated, but newspapers, you can still look for listings like this. Real estate companies, and this might be one that some might not think to look, but real estate companies often, if they own like a leasing company or a building, they will be looking for tenants for that. And sometimes real estate agents will actually do like rental searches for free as they try to like establish clients in the future, or they might have like might have a partnership with a leasing company to where if they refer them, they get paid on that end. So it can be oftentimes free if to link up with a real estate agent to help you look for rental units, and rental property managers are always looking for tenants as well. So they might have some ads out there. Okay, we want to talk about reviewing your lease as well. This is really important. Like I said before, it's really, really important to make sure you read through your lease. It's a legal document. It's a binding legal document. So you really want to make sure that you read it before you sign it and know what you're getting yourself into. And you're going to want to look for hidden fees or cost, or, maybe hidden isn't the right word, but things like you can have an addendum that might list or itemize the different costs associated with like different things you do to the unit. So for example, if you want to hang like paintings or mount a TV in your unit, it might list like, well, at the end of the lease, it'll cost so and so to fill holes that you put in the wall or something like that. Or it might list that what sound violations may cost you, or like if you're responsible for the lawn care in a unit. This is probably not as common in apartment buildings, but sometimes if you're renting like a single family home, then you might be responsible for upkeeping the lawn care as well. They might tell you things like if you can have a grill or not. Some people might want to have a grill, but if they have a wooden balcony, they don't want to grill on that, as it's a fire hazard. So it's really important to like read through your lease completely, and make sure that you know everything that's going in there and what your responsibilities are going to be and what you might have to pay for if you do certain things to the unit. And lastly here, you want to get ready to move in. So there's a couple things that you should do. You're going to want to secure renter's insurance for your property. Renter's insurance follows basically your stuff and also has some liability coverage in there as well. And some like leasing companies might even require you to hold it for that liability coverage. So you may be required to get renter's insurance, but it's always a good thing to get, even if you're not required to do it. You're going to want to look into whether or not you might need to rent a truck or hire professional movers. You're probably going to need to put utilities in your name if your building like requires you to pay for utilities or whatever. Maybe you only have to pay for electric and you don't have to pay for water or sewage or gas. But you're going to want to make sure that you get those utilities set up so that when you move in, all your services are available. And things like internet, and well, you might have to transfer your internet service from one place to another. And you're going to have to pack, obviously. This can be one of the tedious and kind of long processes. And a hidden cost, I think, to watch out for when you're moving is packing supplies. If you don't have a lot of boxes laying around or packing tape or bubble wrap or things like that, those things can get pretty expensive. I had a recent move and we probably spent, in between $150 and $200 on just boxes, packing tape, and bubble wrap alone. So that can really add up fast if you're not prepared for it. There's ways to get around this too. There's places like Barnes and Noble or other bookstores that just have a ton of cardboard boxes laying around, and they might give them to you for free. So you can go around and ask local stores if they've got some boxes that they might be willing to part with. So that's kind of one way to get around that cost, but just be prepared for that when you go to start packing. And reminder that some places charge move-in fees or like a security deposit. Security deposits are more common, but now we're seeing more often that you might have like a move-in fee, especially if you live in like a high-rise building where they kind of charge you a non-refundable fee to make sure that they can cover any damages you might cause to the building as you're moving in. And we just want to plug our podcast one more time. We actually just recently released an episode on renting that kind of covers all of this in more detail. So if you have any more questions on this, I'll be here to answer them at the end, but I would also encourage you to go check out the podcast as well. And that should be like only 2 episodes back in our feed. And I think we're going to go back to Andrea to talk about buying a home.
Thank you, Jake. So now that we've covered the basics of renting, let's jump into the basics of buying a home. We're going to give you a minute to think about what your dream home is. Can you tell us in the chat kind of what your dream home looks like? What features do you think you'd want? Where's the ideal location? Is it by the beach? Maybe it's close to family. Is it in the woods? Do you like a certain type of architecture? Maybe you're into Tudor or craftsman style details, or you want like a simple ranch. It's easy to care for, or maybe you want a big space that's good for hosting parties because that's what you want to do. On the beach, lots of light, big sunroom and vaulted ceilings, pool, fenced in yard near the beach. I would want a fenced in yard, of course. I have a greyhound. It's got to be like a 6-foot one because she could clear that 4-foot fence. Large backyard, urban, cabin in the woods, on a golf course. Lots of people like light, lots of light. 2-story, space for gardening, Victorian style. We have this very diverse sense of taste in our dream home here. I love it. All right, so now we've given you a chance to think about what your dream home is. Let's talk about the steps to home ownership. So we way oversimplified the home ownership process here, but there are a lot of sub-steps along with these 7 steps we've identified, which we're going to talk about over the next few slides. So first thing you're going to do is prepare to purchase. You'll want to start tracking your expenses or analyzing the expenses you've already tracked to get kind of a good idea of what your current lifestyle's budget is. You'll want also to check your credit reports just like you would with renting. And you want to start working on improving your credit worthiness if that hasn't been a priority for you already. And if you haven't already started saving for a down payment and other closing costs, you'll probably want to start doing that too, in addition to the moving costs, because you got moving costs whether you're renting or buying. So probably saving up for those will help with a little cushion there. So once you're able to sort of track and analyze your expenses, you can build a hypothetical budget, and that would include some of the additional costs that you may not have experienced while renting or in other kind of housing situations, like mortgage costs, homeowner association fees or condo fees, utilities, emergency fund savings, all those things that we talked about earlier. And along with the mortgage costs, we talked about escrow a little bit, that taxes and insurance is in, and then PMI might be included, and we'll talk a little bit about PMI in a minute. And like we said earlier, those taxes and insurance costs would persist even after your mortgage is paid off, or even if you purchase a house with cash up front. So those are things to be mindful of. So a down payment, we've mentioned it a couple times, is the amount of money that you need in order to qualify for a loan, basically. Generally, the bigger your down payment is, the more choices that you have for the type of loan that you can get. We're not going to get super deep into mortgages with this webinar, but we would just want to touch on this a little bit. So this graph that I'm showing right now shows the typical down payment for first-time home buyers between 1989 and 2021 fluctuated, but it's generally been below 10% of the value of the asking price of the home or the price of the home. Repeated home buyers have generally had higher down payments, which makes sense, but did not usually exceed 25%. And for more recent context, 2021 down payments were around 7% for first-time home buyers and 17% for repeat buyers. You may have heard that you need a 20% down payment to buy a home. This is not true. However, you will avoid paying that private mortgage insurance I just talked about if you have at least a 20% down payment. So private mortgage insurance, or PMI, this for conventional loans is where if you don't have at least 20% down payment of the purchase price of the home, you'll likely be required to pay this private mortgage insurance. And this type of insurance protects the lender, not you, if you stop making your payments for whatever reason. According to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or CFPB, if you're refinancing with a conventional loan and your equity is less than 20% of the value of your home, PMI is usually going to be required. So that's something important to keep in mind as an additional cost, especially if you don't have that upfront down payment, a sizable upfront down payment. Different types of loans are going to have different requirements for what minimum down payments are required to qualify for the loan. But the average down payment, like we talked about in that one slide, made on homes in the United States in the last couple of years, range anywhere from like 6 to 12% for first-time home buyers, depending on the value of the home and the source that we're using, whether or not they use mean or median values, blah, blah, blah. But to give you a little bit of context, in Illinois and the housing market right now, median listing prices for homes have gone up a lot over the past 5 to 10 years. So if the median listing price for a home in Illinois is around $250,000, that means that a down payment for 6% of that value would be $15,000. A 12% down payment for that home would be $30,000. And a 20% down payment would be $50,000. So that can be a big range, right, of how much you would need for upfront down payment costs. And you may still be able to purchase a home without a down payment at all. For instance, if you're a veteran or service member, a rural resident, or a first-time home buyer, you may be able to be eligible for certain programs that have home ownership assistance. And thanks to Kathy for putting some resources in the chat there as well. So one of the other steps is you're going to want to explore loan options and compare loans. You can start looking at homes at any time in this process, but if you wait until you have pre-approvals from lenders, you'll probably have more leverage when you go to make an offer. So right now, a lot of homes are still selling really fast. So if someone puts on an offer on a house that you want and they have a pre-approval and you don't have one, the seller may just decide to go with the person who has taken the steps to try to secure funding to show that they are serious about purchasing a home. And you can get a pre-approval and then decide still to shop around and compare loan options after you make an offer on a house. So that's not going to seal you into one kind of deal there. And there's many types of loans, but the things you want to pay close attention to when you're comparing loans is to the term or the length of time for the loan. And the interest rate, obviously. Is the term going to be a traditional 30-year mortgage or a conventional 30-year mortgage, or do you want a shorter term like a 15-year or a 20-year? Is the rate going to be fixed for the life of the loan, or is it going to be variable? Sometimes variable rate loans are called adjustable rate mortgages or ARMs. So you might see that kind of marketed as an option. You also want to know the difference between a lender and a servicer. The lender is who originates the loan, who gives you the loan, kind of owns the loan. Not all lenders service their own loans. They might contract with another company to service loan. They might sell the loan to a different company that contracts with a different servicer. And the servicer is who you actually talk to when the loan is in repayment, about any issues you might have with repaying your loan, or if there's an issue with your escrow account not being used to pay your taxes or insurance. So that's who you would talk to if there's any issues with those aspects of your loans. You'll also want to look at the cost of the origination fees when you're comparing what loan options you have. These are sometimes called administration fees, and they cover the cost of creating the loan. So it's a different fee on top of what the principal balance that you're borrowing, as well as the interest and the escrow and the private mortgage insurance. There's all these little fees that can add up. So paying attention to those when you're comparing your options can be really helpful. Another thing that I want to talk about kind of briefly is amortization. And according to the CFPB, amortization means paying off a loan with regular payments over time so that the amount you owe decreases with each payment. Most home loans amortize, but some mortgage loans do not fully amortize, meaning that you would still owe money after making all your scheduled payments. So some home loans actually allow payments that cover only the amount of interest due each month, or an amount less than what the interest is due. If the payments are less than the amount of interest due each month, the mortgage balance will grow rather than decrease, right? That principal balance isn't being paid, so it's going to continue to grow. This is called negative amortization. There are some loan programs that don't amortize fully during the loan, and those will require a large lump sum or balloon payment at the end of the loan. So it's important that you're reading your fine print and being sure to know what type of loan you're getting and how your interest is accrued and paid over time, so you're not surprised by that at the end of your 30-year mortgage or 20-year mortgage. There are lots of amortization calculators that you can use where you can kind of see over time how much of your monthly payment is going towards interest versus what's going towards principal. I'm showing this example here as an assumption that we have a $250,000 home. That's what our principal loan balance is going to be, minus a 6% down payment of $15,000. Our fixed interest rate is 4.125%. And at year 19, we still owe over $120,000. We've paid approximately $114,000 towards the principal, and we've paid $145,000 in interest over this 19 years into a 30-year loan. This will give you kind of an idea of what how terms or the length of time of a loan can impact how much interest you pay over time. This is just one example. There's lots of different calculators out there, but we wanted to give you a more clear idea of how interest plays a role in the total cost of your loan. All right, so we also need to know who all the players are in the home buying process. So you want to put in the chat, who do you think you need to talk to throughout a home buying process? Ooh, this one might be a little challenging. The seller, some people say the seller. So in the interest of time, oh, the real estate agent, yeah. Any other guesses? Lender, lawyer. Okay, now they're coming. You are correct. So there are tons of people to talk to. You're going to want to talk to lenders. You're going to be talking to real estate brokers or agents or realtors. if a house is for sale by owner, you might be talking to the seller directly, or your real estate agent will be talking to the seller directly. You also have home inspectors, estate lawyers, insurance agents. The CFPB also suggests including a network of advisors, includes your family and friends and coworkers who have recently bought a home or refinanced a mortgage kind of in the area that you're looking to buy. So there's lots of people to talk to, lots of people that you need to know how to interact with. And it's important to know that you are your own best advocate. Everyone has a role in this process, and yours is to protect yourself. So I'm glad that you're here today to learn about how to do that. All right, so when you go to look at homes, which just like renting can be a super fun part of the process or super stressful part of the process. But you're going to want to ask some questions like, are there HOA or condo fees? What are the average utilities? How much are property taxes? There might be other questions that you want to make sure to address. There's lots of things that you want to pay attention to. We've talked about HOA fees a couple times. HOAs or homeowner associations are organizations that governs the community that a home is in, whether it's a subdivision, a planned community, or maybe a condo building. There's often additional fees to consider when choosing to live in a community governed by an HOA, and not all homes, it's important to remember, not all homes have an HOA. So asking about that and the fees or even some of the rules associated with the HOA is really helpful, right? For identifying if that's where you want to live or if it works in your hypothetical budget that you created that would work with maintaining other parts of your lifestyle besides living just in a new home that you own. You also are going to want to make an offer once you've identified what house you love and want to try to live in. You might need to make multiple offers or put in multiple offers, especially right now with how competitive the market is. Like we talked about earlier, higher down payments may give you more leverage even in the offer process. And you also will have to remember to pay earnest money. So this is money that you pay to confirm the offer contract. It shows that you are serious about buying the home you've made an offer on. So there are lots of ways to show how serious you are about buying a home to the seller, which is an important part of making that contract happen. All right, so at this point, after the offer has been accepted, you got to prepare to close, and your list of duties isn't done yet. So you have to shop around for insurance. We talked about homeowners insurance a little bit earlier. We've also talked about it in some podcasts that we'll link to as well. And you'll also want to talk to and hire probably an estate lawyer. Sometimes you are required to hire a home inspector depending on the lender, or sometimes regionally where you are trying to buy a home, but it's not always required. And then you will also have to schedule an appraisal that's often required by lenders, but not always. And maybe you want to have an appraisal done even if you buy with cash. It kind of depends on what you decide. And for those of you that don't know, an appraisal is the assessment of the value of something. In this case, a home. IDFPR, who we're partnering with, Jake works for IDFPR, licenses appraisers, or the people that are responsible for creating that valuation of a piece of real estate. So home appraisals are done for lots of reasons, not just when buying a home. When they are done before the sale of a home, it usually helps lenders avoid losses on the loan. So that can be really helpful to remember as well. All right, I said we wouldn't talk about mortgages in depth. We've kind of touched on it a couple times, but you'll likely, after you've bought the home, get this periodic kind of mortgage statement, either by mail or electronically from your loan servicer that lets you know what your payment is, and other factors that go into that payment. Here's just one example of what that might look like. And as you can see, the principal and interest and escrow in this case are itemized in this statement, and it shows you your monthly payment and all the fees charged. It also shows your outstanding principal, and when it is expected to pay off, as well as what the interest rate is. Not all mortgages are going to have like a prepayment penalty like what's listed here, but that is also something to pay attention to if you're like, I got a raise, I want to pay off my mortgage sooner and save some interest money. Comparing how much interest money that you will save to that prepayment penalty is really important for deciding if whether or not that's a good idea based on all the different factors in your financial life or plan. And I'm going to hand it back over to Jake to talk about some resources available.
Thanks again, Andrea. And yeah, real quick, I know we had a couple questions in chat, so I'm just going to go through some resources that are available to people at the end here. So I mentioned this before, but the Department of Housing and Urban Development has a website, HUD.gov, where you can do a lot of different things. They have a lot of rental assistance on there and a lot of resources for renters. You can find an apartment through there. You can look up public housing. You can look into local renting info. You can list a rental property. And they also have that web page for state-by-state tenant rights. And that's a really useful resource when you're looking to rent. And like Andrea was talking about, and I know someone had a question about homeowner assistance earlier in the chat. So let's say you've done your self-assessment and realize that you are feeling like buying a home is something that you want to do, or you have a timeline for when you know you want to do it and you want to get started. You might want to look around for homeowner assistance programs. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, again, commonly called HUD, has a whole webpage dedicated to homeowner assistance in Illinois, which we are going to put in the chat. You may even look in your community development programs for resources within your municipality or county to help you get funding or counseling to help you buy a home. And this is pretty specific to where you live. So I would just encourage the listeners, if they're interested in that, to look into like maybe there's a county homeowner assistance program or a municipality. So maybe if you live in like Champaign or something like that, Champaign as a city might have a program, or Champaign County might have a program as well. We also always want to put this in, but it's important when you're doing anything financial and making these big financial decisions, is to watch for scams. Unfortunately, there's people out there who are looking to take advantage of other people. So you want to really be on the lookout for that. When you're renting or getting ready to rent, I would really encourage you to do your research and research the rental company. If you're going through like a rental or leasing company, make sure they're legitimate and they've been in business, they have good reviews, all those things. I think it's really important to view the property in person before signing. And I know that's not always possible if, for example, you're moving across country or to a different state or out of your area. But if you can, I would really encourage you to view the property before signing. And if you can't actually view it yourself in person, try to have like a trusted person go look at it for you, or maybe even have like the leasing agent that you're communicating with, FaceTime you or do a video call from the actual unit to make sure that it's a real place that exists. And also, sometimes people in rental agreements, they might do payments online through a portal, and that's pretty secure. Or they, if you're dealing with like a single landlord who's just renting out a home that they own, they might ask you to make payments over like a person-to-person payment application, like Zelle or Venmo or Cash App. And so you always want to make sure that your payments are going to the correct place and the correct person. Something that I do is I will ask that person if they can verify like a small amount. It can be a less than $1 amount, and you can send that over to that person, ask them to send you a screenshot of the amount. You don't even have to specify the amount so that it goes to the exact right person. And then once you verified that, you can send the rest of the money over to them. And for the home purchase protection tips, it's always a good idea. Just don't share personal info via email. Know your lender, your servicer, and all the other players. Make sure they're trusted partners and you've done your research and looked into them. And then you're just going to record your interactions and dates, and make sure you're keeping track and keeping a file and keeping those resources on hand so that you have a record of them later. And kind of just to summarize everything we talked about today, self-assessment is necessary to determine if renting or buying is the best for you right now. So really kind of ask yourself those questions and see what you're ready for or not ready for. Credit can really impact your access to housing options, either for leases or for mortgages. So make sure that you're aware of your credit. Like I said, we have those resources on credit as well. If you might want to work on your credit and try and get that score up a little bit, you can go look into those resources that we've done before. The steps for renting and buying differ, but there are some similarities. You know, if you're going into a new home, everybody's got to move their stuff from place A to place B. So there's some similarities there, but there are definitely differences and things to consider. And there's many resources available to help. You know, we've tried to list a lot of them today, but we're also going to send around kind of all the links that we put in chat today if you're interested in looking into any more of this. And we just want to ask everybody to sign up for our next webinar on student loan repayment. There's a lot of news and information going on with student loans and student loan repayment right now. That's going to be on Wednesday, May 18th. So be sure to check that one out as well. And if you want to look at any of our previous webinars on YouTube, you can go to go.uillinois.edu/get-savvy. And all of our previously recorded webinars are going to be available there. If you want to stay in contact with us, you can get in touch with us at the Illinois Division of Financial and Professional Regulation at idfpr.com. We've got Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, the University of Illinois system. Just stay in contact with us online or reach out if you have any questions. And if there's any questions in chat that we missed, I think Andrea and I think we have a couple minutes here for questions if there were any.
We have a list of questions.
And well, let's get to them, Gabby.
So,
yeah,
all right.
Fire them off.
Any comments on, are things still as difficult as last year to buy a home? I know somebody noticed that some of the resources were from spring 2021.
So I've not recently bought a home. I bought my home many years ago. But this is very much it depends kind of question. Like, it depends on where you're looking to buy a home. Is the difficulty that you've experienced in finding lending, or is it in finding a home to purchase, right? There's a lot of different factors that go into the level of difficulty. Is it difficult to find a lender because your credit needs some improvement, or are you only able to talk to lenders that may only be able to offer certain types of loans? There's a lot of questions. I have more questions to get down to the difficulty piece there, I think.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that goes into that. And I would say too, just one thing to keep an eye out for is I know that there's a possibility that the Federal Reserve might raise interest rates. So that might affect interest rates when you're looking at buying a home as well. But I think as far as the most recent resources that I've read is that the housing stock is still, it's pretty low and the demand is still pretty high. So.
Okay, moving.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think we'll move on. I think it's going to be local, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, and in addition to the down payment, what are the other closing costs that people might want to be aware of?
It's an excellent question. So there's the origination fee, sometimes called the administration fee, that can be included in the closing costs. There's earnest money that can sometimes be included in the closing costs for mortgages. Some people also include other fees or costs in closing costs, like in addition to down payment, earnest money, origination fees. You might have estate lawyer fees, right? You got to pay for that. There might be title insurance fees, for instance. I'm trying to think of what other ones may be included, but again, getting those itemized lists from the lender so you can do apples to apples comparisons across lenders is very, very helpful. I felt like that was a very confusing part of my shopping around process when I bought a home, was like, what am I supposed to ask for with closing costs? what do people just assume are part of closing costs, but are paid outside of your relationship with the lender, right? My earnest money was paid to the realtor company for the contract. Moving costs are not paid. They are sometimes people included in closing costs, but it's really not part of closing costs, it's moving costs. So it's really confusing. The CFPB has a lot of really good resources though for the shopping around for a mortgage and what's included in closing costs, like the origination fee or title insurance fee or earnest money and those other aspects.
Okay. Anything else, Jake, or is that?
Nope, I think Andrea nailed it.
Okay. Somebody else wanted to just share that, you know, sometimes when we think about the differences between renters and mortgage homeowners costs, that some of the costs that we break out for homeownership are kind of, you know, padded into or passed along to the renters. And so they may, when they start thinking about it, be kind of paying for that already, but just in a different format. That was just something to share. And then a question came up about, will property tax in the future be based on the higher sales price? So if somebody buys a house at a higher price than it's been before, should people expect the property tax to rise? And we had some conversation in the chat about that, but I thought maybe I'd let you guys weigh in on it.
I actually, so I'm in the process of selling my brother's home because he recently died. And one of the realtors actually specifically talked about, you know, people will be considering the higher price that they pay on a home than what it's appraised for by the county as part of the additional cost for taxes. So that is a possibility. I also, like, counties do appraisals throughout at different points during your home ownership period. So it can also fluctuate from that perspective as well.
Right.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I would agree on that. Yeah, just I think it's just important to know wherever you're located, what your county requires as far as property assessments go, and know what the time horizons are on when those are coming up for you, because those will probably affect your property taxes.
Okay, good. It looks like we're actually getting new questions in the chat. We have one, what are your views on buying directly from an owner rather than going through a realtor? Pros and cons. I'm not sure if that's part of this webinar or not, but I'll let you guys decide.
Well, I can provide my perspective. So when you are purchasing a home, the realtor, you can have a realtor that works for you, that communicates with the realtor that works for the seller, and they are paid by the seller. They split the commission costs. And one of the benefits of having a realtor is there are so many different small things that have to be done to secure a sale. And realtors have experience doing that, right? When you can still have a realtor talk to a seller who's trying to sell a home by themselves without a realtor. And I've talked to some realtors that say it is sometimes difficult to get homeowners that are selling their homes themselves to do all the things that need to be done in order to secure the sale of the home. So that is one factor. Sometimes the costs can be lower, depending on the situation, the seller, but it also is a very emotional kind of thing. And so having a buffer can be a benefit. I probably have more pros to use a realtor than I do talk directly to a seller. I don't know if Kathy, you have a different opinion.
I don't know if I have a different opinion. I think that I think you make an excellent point that a realtor wants to make that sale, so they'll be helping you, but they actually are not working directly for you. They're working for the seller. And so, there's some, be aware, know that it can be very helpful sometimes to have a lawyer read over a lease. Anything that you don't understand, I always think is good. It's a legal document. I think it's good to have a lawyer take a look at it, make sure that you're understanding what's written down. And I think getting somebody that can do a home inspection who is actually working directly for you and not the seller is also a piece to consider in there. So those kind of come into play, I think, too.
Yeah, and I was going to add, I actually think this question is somewhat applicable to renters as well, and not the difference of, you're not going through a realtor, so to speak, but there's sometimes people have the choice of whether they want to rent from like an individual owner or like a leasing company that maybe owns a lot of different properties. And I think there's pros and cons to both of those. I think like one of the considerations for that is kind of the maintenance. And, if you're with a big leasing company, they might have people on staff that are, do maintenance requests and handle those type of things. Whereas if you rent from like a single family unit owner, they have to handle that maintenance themselves. So that's like a consideration for renters as well. But I know you were speaking more towards the realtor relationship, but I just wanted to point out that sometimes you have that decision as a renter, whether you want to go with like an established, like a bigger company, or like an individual owner. And I would just encourage people to look into who you're renting from before you kind of sign that lease, so you kind of know what you're getting yourself into, and hopefully avoid anybody that is bad about handling maintenance or other requests like that.
I think that's a great point, Jake.
I think I see another comments going on in the chat that just kind of drive in the point that, buying a home is a large financial decision. And so knowing all of what you're getting into makes a lot of sense, and doing your research. And somebody asked about how do you know what the rules are? And, keep in mind that the city might have rules, a realtor may know some of the rules, but sometimes subdivisions have rules as well. So you may need to go to like your county office and property office and actually look at that plot to make sure you fully understand all the rules.
Well, and some municipalities will have different rules and processes as well.
Correct. So lots of levels to do research on. All right. I think we're kind of getting down there on the questions, unless somebody else sees something that I missed.
I think we got to the question about, the rules in chat. I think we did a good job of addressing that in chat. But yeah, if you're renting, and there should be if you're renting, any restrictions on what you can have in your home, balcony, yard should all be detailed in your lease ahead of time. And I would say, Andrea, I don't know if you know more, I would think an HOA or your subdivision would have rules on what you can do on your property once you're in there. Yeah,
they would, and hopefully they would be available. Maybe the realtor can get a hold of the HOA if that's something that you're seriously considering. I don't live in a community that has an HOA, so I'm less familiar with like the logistics of it. But that is something that you can ask for. And also, even with buying a condo, for instance, there'll probably be rules and fees associated with it that you'll want to know ahead of time. What are these fees going towards? What are the rules for the condo association? What are my rights, right, as well? So there's all those different things that should be publishable or askable to the right people.
Yeah. You can look for rules on pets and things like that as well, in all those type of documents.
All righty.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. If you have any questions later that you think of, you can email studentmoney@uillinois.edu, and we'll try to get you an answer. Some questions have more opinion-based answers to them, and we got to be careful about those, obviously, but we'll get you the research that we can to address those if you send them to us later. Again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for staying on. We'll be sending the recording and all the resources that we put in the chat. Hopefully next week or the following week, we're a little bit behind from the last webinar, and have a fabulous day.